And I'll just tell them to stop once they've gone on for a while.
Right.
Okay. And Jessica, if you can make me the host.
All right, your host now, and we're live.
Okay, so we have Jackie Larson and Nils Bergeson joining us. They're going to have 36 minutes to go over their 3 applications, and I'll just let you know.
Hello and welcome to our combined commission meeting this evening. I want to thank you for taking time to present to us. And you get 12 minutes per application, so your entity gets 36 minutes, including questions. And Jess will let you know when your time is up. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, great. Am I presenting my own presentation, or are you guys going to pull it up for me? I can pull it up for you. 1 second. Okay. Oh, can you see it now? It's okay. There we go. Yes, thank you. Okay. So my name is Jackie Larson, and I am the executive director at Centro Espanol. Centro Espanol is a 501c3 nonprofit located in Provo, and we've been around since about 2002. Centro Espanol's mission is to empower Latino and Utah families by providing equitable access to information, resources, and educational programs to advance and strengthen the community. I'm here tonight with my colleague, Nils Bergeson, who's one of our wonderful program directors. He's also a foreign service officer, and we're really lucky to have him on our team. We submitted 3 different applications, one for community resources. I'll be talking about that one. And then I'll turn the time over to him to talk about our citizenship preparation class and our driver's education manual class. So for community resources, if you could switch the slide to the community resources section. The idea behind the community resources program is that Spanish-speaking members of the community have difficulty accessing essential community services such as work, housing, food, and healthcare because of communication barriers. Centro Espanol helps to break down this barrier by providing services such as resume building in English, job application assistance also in English, translation of important legal documents like birth certificates, wedding certificates, and college degrees, as well as providing notary services. And then along with that, Centro Espanol also provides some different kinds of consultations, a lot about labor laws, wage disputes, domestic violence, immigration issues. And then if there's something that we can't help with, the person who's been working in this position has been at Centro Espanol for more than 12 years. And she's very knowledgeable about all of the different resources in the community. She'll send them to wherever will be the best place to help them. So the Community Resources Program is actually Centro Espanol's longest running program. In fact, it was the only program that Centro Espanol had in the beginning. And I know that for several years, it was actually funded with Community Development Block Grant funding. And I'm here to sort of reestablish that program in the community. We've been able to, well, this program is been, I don't know, it's been struggling a little bit because of the lack of CDBG funding. But the person who's working in this program, her salary has been partially funded by other programs, so we've been able to keep her on board. And we have a couple of other applications in the works, but we haven't received those yet, so we didn't include them in the application. So that is the Community Resources Program. Do we want to do questions all at the end, or do we want to do program by program? Okay, maybe we'll just do them all at the end then. All right, I'll turn the time over to Nils to talk about our citizenship preparation and driver's education programs.
Okay, fantastic. And thanks, Jackie. So I'm going to tell a little bit about our citizenship preparation program, which is essentially exactly as the name describes. It's helping those who are permanent residents and who meet the qualifications for U.S. citizenship to be able to successfully participate in the naturalization process, which involves application, several steps, and the interview or exam, as it's often called. Can we look at the next slide? Here in Utah County, I know that there are, let's see.
This is the next slide. Is that what you wanted?
Oh, are we missing the?
Yeah, there's nothing
Okay.
between. Yeah, sorry.
Not a problem. Not a problem. In Utah County, there are currently at least about 9,000 individuals we're aware of who are qualified, who are able to apply for citizenship, meaning that they've met the qualifications. But it is a somewhat complex process in that many people are not familiar with exactly everything that's been involved and so forth in submitting their application and preparing for the exam. Also, because it is always conducted in English, that can be a barrier. There are some exceptions for people who've been here for a lot of years who are over certain ages can have that waived. But for most people who are applying, they still are needing to at least be able to prepare in English. So there's particular vocabulary and there's particular elements to the exam that we try to provide information on those things. Ultimately, there are three different pieces to the citizenship interview. One is a general interview regarding their application. Two is testing their ability to speak, understand, read, and write in English, including some specific phrases and things that they will give relative to the test. And then there's a civics exam portion where there's up to 100 questions that are asked that concern U.S. history, U.S. government, and so forth. They're all asked in English and are answered in English. What we've provided since 2014 is a 7-week course where we primarily focus on these questions and on the English phrases for the reading and writing portions, and really helping those who are going through this application process to be ready and prepared to be able to successfully complete the citizenship exam. Initially, this was just, I think in Jackie's previous discussion on community resources, immigration is a component of it. So this was a smaller subsection of that program under the community development block grants in previous iterations of the community resources. We have since expanded and created a lot of our own curriculum to better be able to teach these principles, give resources to those who are preparing. And so we have had over the last year a couple of additional funding streams which have allowed us to expand to a degree the citizenship preparation program. And that includes a naturalization grant from Salt Lake County. Even though we're focused on Utah County, they had been working with adjacent counties because a lot of the resources had been there to build up capacity here and in Ogden and some other areas that covered about 20,000. And then another grant from the Sorensen Legacy Foundation, which is actually shared with the driver's education program, which I will go ahead and talk about now, if we can move a couple of slides ahead. So driver's education is an area where we've, in the last couple of years, received significant demand and interest in support and preparation for those who are taking the driver's education test. There are actually 3 tests. I don't know if any of you, I mean, you've all done them at some point, but currently there's a general online test that's in English. That's about safety. Then there's a written test that's taken at the driver's license division. And then for those who are getting their license for the first time, a practical test where you drive with a certified driving tester. in the beginning, we have started to focus primarily on the written test. And the reason behind that is because the written test is not currently offered in Spanish. The manual and some of the information is in Spanish, but the people who go to take the test have some limits in terms of access to information. And so for those who are not able to understand, particularly a lot of the specialized vocabulary, phrasing, and terms related to the written driving test in English, we've been developing a curriculum essentially to help with that. It'll certainly help with the written test, as well as preparing for those who do have to take the physical driving test as well, to be able to communicate, understand what some of the terms are. The Utah state law only requires that you have to know English well enough to understand road signs, but for the test, there's a lot of other terms that aren't involved with road signs that we just want to help with the communication and front on that as well. So we're putting together a number of elements of curriculum, including practice tests, including short videos or short description and information about every element of what it takes to legally drive and safely drive here in the state of Utah. And that will go into our curriculum that we'll offer both as available online courses and in-person courses as well. And like I mentioned, $10,000 from that same Sorensen Legacy Foundation. $10,000 is currently funding the initial development of this course, and the other $10,000 is going into our citizenship preparation curriculum development. So,
Okay,
yeah.
questions?
As far as the driver's education, do you find that's more geared towards young drivers, older drivers? Do you kind of have a breakdown on the age group that has the biggest struggle in obtaining a driver's license?
Our experience is it's largely been older groups, because often the language barriers become a little bit more challenging, or even if they are able to communicate well enough in English, translating that into the written test can be challenging at times. I mean, it does apply to all, but since most who are immigrants who come here as residents, regardless of their age, will find that they have to go through this in the beginning to get their driver's license. But particularly for those vocabularies, phrasing and stuff, it's the older residents who are looking for that support.
So it looks like you haven't received CDBG funding in the past. Is that correct?
We have, but the last time it was I think the last time they applied and received funding was in 2015. Two directors before me.
So that's before our application history has.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I'm curious, are you requesting this because of increased needs and like from expanding programs, or is this replacing other funding sources?
So I wouldn't say the need has increased. I would say the need has been the same since it was when we had this grant before. Well, I take that back. We have had an increase of calls. I think we've been on people's radars a little bit more since we've had a COVID-19 relief program and a digital inclusion program, which was funded by a lot of you guys. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, so I'm not sure why my predecessors did not apply for this funding, but the program has remained the same and unfortunately has been underfunded since 2015. And so for the last year and a half, I've been trying to figure out where to get funding from. So it's been a little bit difficult, and I'm hopeful that with CDBG funding, we can implement the program in its full capacity, the way that it was originally meant to be implemented, and helping people really build their own self-reliance and be successful in the community, which ends up benefiting the community as a whole.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, Jackie, you can move on to your next presentation.
Oh, that was our only presentation. We did all three of them at once.
Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for being with us tonight and have a good evening.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay. That's all of our presentations, right, Jess? Okay, well, now it's time to start our scoring, but first I need to know if anyone would like to go into closed session to discuss the health, character, or competency of any of our applicants. Anyone have any concerns with those? Okay, well, I'll turn the time over to Jessica and Dan for the scoring. Is that how we want to handle it?
You guys need more time just to go through and enter your scores before we discuss and present them, or do you want to do that collaboratively?
Have we put you all to sleep?
I have sent my scores. So I kind of, maybe you can just check and see if you've received them.
So I can see that several of you do have or have had enter your scores. Some of you are in the process of doing that. So maybe we just need to give it a little time, maybe.
In that time, we'll try to figure out where we get another few $1 million and we can go home happy.
Summer says hers are in. Okay, well, let's take 5 minutes and you guys can work on your scores.
Who's tabulating? Who has the scores?
Let me share the screen, my screen. I'm looking at those here. Oh, where's that screen? There it is. Okay, can you see that screen? So, let me do something with this. Maybe I'll just wait until all scores are in.
So we just need to be doing each one on up to 20, right? The scores that it shows.
Right. So you have your individual sheet, like this one is yours, Soraya, and you just enter your score for each one of the applications based on the section here. It could be up to 20. Could be anywhere from 0 to 20 based on the information given here.
Okay.
And as each of you enter your scores, this averages everybody's scores.
Sorry, can you remind me, was Utah Valley Family Support, did they used to be called, are they up on Orem right off the freeway? They used to be called something different?
I don't know that they were used to call anything different, but they are up in Orem 200 West. I personally refer to them typically as family support only But
Yeah,
I think,
okay, that's I think what is messing with my head. I'm like, I just feel like that's not what we've called them in the past. So, okay.
yeah.
We usually call them the Family Support and Treatment Center.
That's what they're usually called. Okay, thank you. It's kind of fun to watch the scores change.
So is everybody enter their scores then?
Does it look like it?
Sorry, are you able to enter your scores okay?
Yes, I'm in the middle of doing it.
Okay, good.
Can you just verify that you received them, just to make sure?
Yes, let's see.
And just say maybe who you have not. I believe my
So-
score's there.
Well, below on the tabs, you can just click through and see who hasn't done their tab yet.
So Sarai's still working on them. I've got Ken's, got all of Joey's, all of yours, Mayor Frost, we're in. All of the Mayor's Fulmers are in. Summer's done. Sarah's done. So as soon as Sarai gives us a thumbs up, then everybody should be good to go.
I've got mine in.
All right. Except I'm just going to put them in a different cell here so they can.
I'm not 100% sure on all of them. It was more of like trying to go with gut feelings, knowing that it was going to be working together with other people on it.
No worries. It's just our formula reads them from the blue. So now I know that they're all in. Okay, so we got that. Okay, it's gonna help.
We do have a total scores on that final score sheet. Dan.
Do we?
Yeah, you already have it there. If you go to that final.
This
score.
one, there we go.
Yeah, right in that.
There it is. I knew we would have thought about it before.
You did.
Okay.
You already put it there.
Okay. I just went through it too fast. All right. Okay. So here are how things stand then. Everybody can see this screen okay, I hope. So we have all the applicants here. This column here totals, averages your scores and adds the admin scores that were given for a total score for each one of the applicants. So how do we want to proceed from here?
Dan, do you want to explain the capital projects with House of Hope and then why United Way follows under planning?
Okay, sure. So let me explain this a little bit of this spreadsheet, this part of the spreadsheet here. We have entered here how much each of the entitlements are receiving in this section here. And from that, how much is available for public services. Each of the entitlements averages about 10% of their allocation that we're putting there. And then we have, based on how many capital projects from over here, that's how much we would have available for it. So these numbers totaled up here in these sections. The first one, per program regulations, we are able to set aside up to 15% for public services. In this combined effort, each entitlement has kept a little bit to serve public service agencies that exclusively provide services to our entitlements. And so this total amount is what's available for the combined application. On the capital services project, capital projects for service agencies, we had 3 projects, but one of them did not meet the minimum requirements. Another one decided to withdraw their application because they didn't have all the estimates they needed. And so ultimately, House of Hope is the only project, capital project that had everything and from whom we listened to. And I'll come back to this in a minute. The last one is United Way. The type of project they're proposing is not a typical project service, meaning they are not providing services at this stage. They're just trying to get some planning funding to figure out how to do it, where to do it, and just as they described in their presentation. So that funding doesn't come from the public services amount that we have available, even though they are a public service agency, because of the type of activity that they're doing. This would come directly from our administration cap. Now, each entitlement, again, based on the amount that we receive here, we can set aside up to 20% for administration costs. And some of those costs include the type of activity that United Way is proposing. Now, coming back to this capital projects part, some of you may remember, depending on how long you've been serving in this committee or in the individual committees with the entitlements, this combined effort we started about 3 years ago. And prior to entering into it, we gathered all the, at least that we knew, all the project service agencies that typically would come asking for some funding. And understanding that specifically with capital projects, they were doing kind of a meal piece sort of approach to it. One of the major intents of the combination of the entitlement services was come to us with what it is that you want, and we'll see if we can fund all the projects that you have in mind by all 3 of us providing that funding, rather than getting $20,000 this year and $30,000 next year. So in the last couple of years, we've been able to assist a few of these service agencies, providing anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000, so that they can address most of those capital projects that are needed for their agencies. House of Hope, along with Family Support, were the first ones that received funding. Another of the sort of conditions that we also put in there is, if you receive funding for a capital project, which is which is going to cover most of what you need, then we're going to ask you not to come back for about 5 years so that we can give opportunity to other public agencies to service their capital project needs. So House of Hope came back this year. Would this be 3 years instead of 5 years, asking for the, air conditioning units in their cottages. Again, they received funding a couple of years ago. The project is underway. They're almost done. They're doing the parking lot, re-roofing their agency, painting. I forget what was the other part of in the cottages, which we had already provided some funding prior to this time. They're redoing the decks in the back and replacing their doors. So again, even though this is the only capital project, do keep in mind that they were supposed to come back no sooner than 5 years to request more funding for it. Does that kind of cover what you meant, Kenna?
Yeah, yes, Dan, and I think our number is wrong on the contributions, on public service contributions.
What do you mean?
Well, it should, yeah, it should be 60, it should be 10% of that.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sorry, now you have less money.
I know. Well, that's just how it goes. But thank you for catching that. We good with the county, Jessica? Okay.
Yes. Yep, that looks right.
All right.
Is there
Okay.
an issue that the capital projects money has to be spent on capital projects, or is that just a maximum percentage that can be spent on capital?
No, capital projects is where most of the funding is used. But this is specifically to assist public service agencies. There are no minimums. There are no specific caps. It was just that sort of a gentleman's agreement that we proposed when we began the coordination of funding. So I don't know, does that answer the question you had?
That is gonna look sick.
Dan, I think this is Stephen. I think one of the other kind of reasons for the 5-year cap is there's times where each of us three kind of agencies, Utah County, Provo, Orem, Utah County, Provo, we'll have our capital needs too that we need to do. And so giving that 5 years gives some spacing so that there's years and opportunities for Provo to do a big project that they need to do and Orem to have a project in Utah County, versus if people feel like they can come every year, every other year, every third year, it just puts us in a tough spot of having to continue to say no to those projects because we have needs. 5 years, I think, just allows us to be able to do projects as well.
So maybe, Sarah, in addressing your question specifically, while programmatically there's no caps to the capital projects, which is typically what all of the funding is supposed to be used for. In this coordinating effort, this is a local requirement that we put in. We will review your application, and back 3 years ago, all of them provided different projects that they wanted to do. So we know that there are other agencies out there that are waiting for their turn to receive the funding. So
I guess my question was more of if this was a use it or lose it type thing, and if we really don't have anybody else who put in a full application, if it was a good idea, if the not wanting to do something within 5 years outweighs the want to be actually able to do something with the capital projects money.
So I can tell you, if this funding for House of Hope is not provided, that's going to benefit Provo City's projects. We have a few projects that were not funded or that were funded minimally based on the amount that we have. So taking back from this project will help us. So it's not going to be lost. It'll be used. If that was part of the question.
Yeah, that was basically what I was worried. I wasn't sure how the money was coming in and out. So yeah.
Yeah.
And Dan, I may be beating a dead horse here for sure, and I'm known to do that. But I think the other thing too is we want these agencies to get in the habit of looking, 5+ years out, so that we're not. If we fund this one, we go, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, we go back and do another environmental. We have to monitor the project again. Where when they're all done at the same time, it reduces the administrative time we're spending on the project significantly, as opposed to, again, piecemealing it where we're having to kind of redo paperwork each time we go through it.
That's correct. That was another, that on the side of the entitlements, that's the the carrot to do it this way. We're able to do it once and not having to repeat the same admin costs or processes every year for a little bit of a project. So yes, that's how it came down.
So I think in the past, what we've done is, the committee discusses, do you want to go down the list of highest scores and fully fund their request, or do you want to do minimum funding until you run out, any combination of that? So now is really the time for you as the committee to discuss your strategy, and Dan can throw in some numbers there in the yellow column, and we can see where we end up depending on how you want to fund things.
Why did the Mountain Community Health Center receive such a low score? Is that partly because for admin, are you not liking to see them coming back year after year? What's contributing to that score?
Sorry, you're gonna break up. Somebody else was talking when you started your comment. Who are you talking about?
Oh, I was just talking about the Mountain Lion Community Health Center. How come their score is so low? Did they not meet certain admin requirements?
Mostly is because of this here, that first column. That's the percentage of low moderate individuals that receive the benefit. In the case of Mountain Land or any others that have less than 45, is because the services that they provide are for a larger pool of individuals. And based on the numbers that they gave us, the percentage, let's see, we're trying to think where we have that scoring rubric.
It's on the admin score.
Yes, but there was the explanation of this. Anyway, that's basically how they are able to get the number of points here is based on the percentage of beneficiaries that are low to moderate income.
So on page 6 of your whole application packet is the scoring rubric that shows how the admin scores are made.
Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think it's important to realize that Mountain Lands probably serves more low-income people than most of the other programs because of just the volume of people that they serve. They just happen to have a percentage who are also moderate and higher because they do a sliding scale. But then if you look at the raw numbers of low-income people that they serve, they probably outnumber many of the other programs.
Yeah, I'm familiar with what they do. That's why I was surprised, but it makes sense now.
I would maybe if you could help me, and this would be the last three, the Centro Hispano, and their low numbers in comparison with opposed to the Mountain Land, and how administratively they score just lower, and maybe I could read through the application a little bit better, but it went fast. Because I rely heavily on boots on the ground where you guys are involved so much. And it looks like maybe the LMI definitely, as I look at this new sheet here, had a bearing on it.
Yeah, so that's probably the main reason why their scoring is lower, because of that LMI. The disadvantage here as Jackie mentioned, well, at least I know that Provo used to fund their program several years ago, and they would come pretty much every year. At some point, they had a change in the executive director, and so the program kind of lost its wheels for a little bit. And so as they provided their application, they did not exactly have data that they could show to us. It was mostly their estimation of what they were, who they were serving, and how they fell into that LMI category. But they're not having an intake sheet or any kind of data that would help us see what the LMI benefit was. That's how they scored lower than in that area.
Okay.
So that's mostly just because they had a gap in leadership, and the new leadership doesn't have the data because they didn't know to be gathering it over the last couple of years because it wasn't a priority at that time, where the other ones have got the momentum already. Is that what you're saying?
I can guess that that's probably part of it. I would say, yes, the leadership or whatever institutional memory they had in how they did their program lacked the ability to quantify that number. And so unfortunately, it's counting against them right now.
They just so you know, they do have a CDBG CV grant with a couple of us. And so so they're being able to do some of that data collection through that CDBG CV portion of that grant. So they'll have a little bit better knowledge in the future.
So as a suggestion, just to get us started, what if we put the minimum amount in the funding recommendation? Again, just as a starting point. Then we can go up and down and say, well, no, we don't want to do that, or we want to go more, we want to go less, we don't want to give them anything, but at least we'd have a starting point to work with and start tinkering with, and et cetera. So anyway, again, just as a starting point, I thought I would suggest that.
Is the minimum amount already in that spreadsheet over on the right?
Yeah, it's right there.
310?
Yes, 310.
Am I reading it right that the minimum amount, if we gave minimum to everybody, that would be less than what we have available? So we would be able to.
That's correct. Their minimum amount totals 310. We have 382 available. So there's a few that could receive more.
Is there anybody who feels like there's somebody we shouldn't be doing at least the minimum amount for, I guess is the question.
Well, if we just go straight across the board and do a minimum, then the refuge will only get 1,000. The minimum amount is the amount that they could like process. And they generously, I don't know how to say this, but they made their numbers super low. And I don't think we should necessarily just across the board do that.
That's probably a rookie mistake in an application process.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful if like Dan resorted the table using total score as the highest priority?
Oh yeah, we did that last year. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Give me a minute here. I'm not so familiar with sheets as I am with Excel. Should work kind of the same, but I'm sort range by column. Give me an option of.
You're gonna click sort range right there. It's the fifth option right there. Sort range. Yeah, that's gonna give you the pop up.
Yeah, so we need.
You have too many columns.
And you're gonna sort it by column D. Yeah.
Okay, I did it the other way around. Let me fix that. Sort.
And then you
Z
do
through A, and we need column. Okay, there we go. So higher scores now on the top, lower score at the bottom. Minimum amounts are still showing the same on
The
this.
rehab
Right?
clinic surprises me though, because they have so much support from the school and from their donors. So it surprises me that their score here is so high.
I think there's not a lot of other people who are doing what they're doing, I think is part of the reason. So I'm betting that they got some high scores on that. They've been expanding each year. They've used the money and parlayed it into having a bigger program and helping more people. And because they're basically a specialty service that when people aren't getting other places from, that's probably how they ended up scoring high.
Okay, that makes sense.
Doesn't mean we have to give them tons and tons of money. It just means that I'm guessing that's where the score is coming from. I think their minimum is fine, or something in between their minimum and their maximum. I guess maybe I'm not opposed to having the minimum amounts going on, but then also seriously looking at the ones that may have had like rookie mistakes and put a really small amount to prioritize the ones we think should really have higher funding than that.
Okay, so it's just to get us going, I'm going to go ahead and do this easier.
I mean, it looks like we have about, I mean, people are requesting double what we have. So if we went through and just gave everybody 50% to start off.
So there's the minimums entered in there. If there's something you want to add or take away, just let me know.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I think we know that.
And then if you pay attention to this number over here, that means it shows you $71,000, $71,986 is what's left to allocate.
Okay, let's definitely give the refuge more. Start off, get that right off the bat done.
What does more mean?
Maybe the 15, so that they're more in line with the others who also requested 30,000.
Good plan.
I'll also just say, as a policy, Utah County and our other program that's not this collaborative, we typically don't fund anything under $20,000 to $30,000, just because the administrative burden for the subrecipient is what it is, regardless of how much funding they get. And so amounts as low as like 5,000, we don't consider that worth the work that they will have to put in and that we will have to put in. It's not worth the funding that they're getting. So some of those $5,000 ones, maybe we want to increase as well. It's just not a super effective use of the funds.
Excellent point.
On the other hand, a couple of those aren't asking even their requested amounts are less than what your thing would have been. So I don't know that giving them tons more money would make a huge difference.
I'm not sure if I understood what you said, Soraya, there, but the requested amount, there's none under 20,000, and that's
there is Big Brothers and Big Sisters and Project Read are both.
Oh, okay, I see these two.
Those were the ones I was looking at.
All right.
And it's completely up to you. It's just from our perspective.
Also,
this was just Utah County.
Big Brothers and Big Sisters and Project Read, just they're asking so little. Is it just because they run with a very lean? Are they just a smaller? I mean, I know I'm on the board of a nonprofit, and 10,000 would be huge to us, but for the Food and Care Coalition, 10,000 is just a drop in the bucket. So I'm thinking, wow, 10,000, if they only ask for 10,000, that must be a pretty significant number to them. And I think we should go ahead and fully fund it since it's not that much.
Yeah, Project Read is a smaller nonprofit. Big Brothers Big Sisters is a larger nonprofit.
I just wanted to point out Centro Espanol is the one, well, those three projects are among the lowest scoring, but yet they have the highest minimum amount budget for the administrators from the different areas. Would Centro Espanol really not take anything less than 40,000 or 56,000?
That's a good point. You know what I think we should do with them? I think we should just fund one of their projects fully and then not fund the other ones, because can't they administratively inside move the money around? Because that's a huge. They're asking for 150,000. If they came in one application, we'd be like, whoa, that's a huge chunk, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that putting in their minimums is not accurate in terms of balance. I'd rather like fully fund the top 5 and then see where we are or something like that, because that really feels like it's taking into account the scores rather than just starting with base minimum.
Do we want to see that scenario, or you want to just?
Yeah, let's try it.
Well, there were some people who were asking on whether the rehab clinic really should be there on top there. And I think that was a valid concern. Like, just because I understand how the rubric would do that, I don't necessarily think that they would have gotten the top necessarily past some of the ones that are next. Food and care to me makes sense. It hits a lot more people. I want to do some on the rehab clinic, but if it's taking away from other things, I'm not as worried about it getting the full amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I can do whatever you want me to do here. You can put numbers as you wish. And we can look and so there are, as much as we try to make this an objective process and try to put all the agencies in the same playing field, it's not that easy, because of the services it provides, because of how different each agency is. So you're making a lot of good points. And I guess what I want to say with that is there are times where some don't get the funding, and that's okay. I mean, it's kind of tough for them, but there are some that you get more bang for your buck than others.
Yeah, absolutely. Like community action, their housing, I think that needs to be bumped way up too.
That's not being used for rent. That's only admin, right?
But it's getting the money that they do have out.
I know that, and I like that, because I don't want to be funding rents, but I like that they're using it for services to get that allocated well.
If we were to not fund driver's ed and citizenship prep for Centro Hispano, are those things that they could fold into community resources and provide under that grant? I guess I'm just really concerned with how much money they've requested there.
I think that we should give them I agree. Can we just give them their minimum amount for resources, give them 55,000 and then call it good? Because I mean, I've been on this committee for 4 years and they've never come through before. So I feel like before we give them all this money, they need to develop a new relationship. Like we need to see them year after year. Like what was it? Ra, she's been coming back. I guess the first time we saw her was 2 years ago, right, Dan? Anyway, she's been like consistently showing that she's able to spend the money and take care of her people. So
community action number up. It's still at 5.
What do you want it to see? You want to fully fund it?
I would say at least 20.
Just a follow up on Centro Hispano. So when we create the subrecipient agreement between the city or the county and the subrecipient, it has a specific scope of work and budget. So are you saying that you want to give Centro Hispano $55,000 to cover all 3 of those programs as they dictate the budget for that? Or do you want us just to fund the community resources project?
Oh,
the question I have, do they have that ability based upon what they've already presented in their grant? Is there flexibility to say, here it is, community resources, you have 3 programs, we're going to give you the latitude to spend within those 3 programs based upon the grant?
Yeah, and we could give them that ability to do that. They would be the ones who provide the scope of work and the budget, so long as it matches the information in their applications. And then we could say, you have $55,000. How would you like to spend on these 3 programs? So if that's your intent as the committee, then we can do the subrecipient agreements that way.
I'm very comfortable with that.
I just want to make sure we're funding what you actually want to fund.
Agreed. I think they had some good ideas, but trying to start 3 separate programs that much might be a bit much. And so being able to have one chunk of money to be able to see what they can do with it and then come back the next year and say, hey, we were able to do this and now we can parlay it into more is good, because there's definitely a need for that, for those resources. And in a community, it would serve a lot of people, but figuring out how to ramp that up could be interesting.
I love it when people are way more articulate than me. Exactly. Amen.
I support this, just giving the Centro Hispano the single amount for the resources and giving them their latitude. I mean, I think that's a good idea. So I support that.
And I agree with that as well.
All right. So there's still $65,000 available. And I guess, do you feel comfortable with those that are receiving the full allocation? Is there someone that you would like to see getting more?
I'd like to see Big Brothers Big Sisters fully funded. I know I've got a soft spot in my heart for organizations that focus on kids. And I know this organization can completely change the trajectory of a child's life. So, and they're only asking for 10,000. So that's my case.
I'm also wondering about RAW. In years past, it's kind of seemed like these funds are what keeps them going. And so I'm worried that if we just give them $10,000 and their request is 48, they're going to be way short. Kenna or anyone else, do you know if they have other funding sources they can reach to?
Yeah, RAW would be one that, RAW is one of those small nonprofits that struggle. And I know CDBG is very valuable to them, just to throw that out there.
Yeah.
What if we raise Rob up to $30,000?
Exactly what I was going to say.
You know, I see one of the bigger gaps I see from that minimum to the requested amount is kids on the move. I mean,
Bump that up all the way to 20,000?
I would say maybe even just go half of that, go 10. It's somewhere in their minimum request and the requested amount.
I would probably fully fund Project Read as well to the 17.
So I'm curious what everyone thinks about the Mountainland Community Health Center, because according to their application, they do serve like 8,200 extremely low income people in a year. And obviously because they serve some people that are higher, it reflected poorly on them. But to me, that seems like it's worth more than $5,000.
You know, I have been totally impressed with how they have come each year for exactly what they needed. It could be, at one time it was blood pressure cuffs, then it was a chair. And I have a great deal of trust in what they do. I absolutely agree with James. And I don't know where to move that to unless we just take and round it right off with that $30,266. That.
You want to put the balance in there or just part of it?
I support putting the balance in there.
Let's put it there so we can at least feel good that we're at a real good point. And
Well, I would support taking some from the rehab clinic. I don't know that I don't know. I would support lowering that $30,000 recommendation for the rehab clinic and maybe giving some of that to Mountain Land.
I agree too.
They do work together. I mean, Mountain Lands refers people to the rehab, but yeah.
I guess I've never really understood the inner workings of this one, and it's always kind of, I don't know, just teaching hospitals and teaching, universities. They have all this free student labor, and I'm just wondering why, where the money is. I just wish I wish I could understand how lean, or if they're operating lean.
Mountain Lands is basically your
Not Mountain Lands. I'm talking about the community rehab clinic by
right.
Rocky Mountain.
Right, and that's what I was trying to get into, is they're referring people who need to have ongoing care to be able, there's only so much you can do from like medicines and stuff, and there's a lot of things that are treated better if you actually do the physical movement. The fact that the community rehab clinic is getting people through the physical motions they need to in fewer visits than others is really good. I know a lot more about rehab right now because I've been taking my mom to rehab quite a bit after her stroke. And the stuff that they do helps get people not on medicines to have to not go back to the main part. There's just a lot of really good use that you get. And the fact that they're using a lot of volunteer stuff just means that they are getting, they're serving multiple at the cost that anybody else would serve one. And so they're actually doing really well. It's kind of like your next level to fully get people back to where they need to be, so that they don't have to just rely on medicine and have to go back into the primary care all the time. So it takes burden off of Mountain Lands to be able to refer them over there and get those people to be able to be more, when you do physical therapy, you have much more personal investment in being able to get better and in being able to go forward.
Thanks, that made a lot of sense.
From their application, though, it looks like $30,000 is about 8% of their operating budget. So I don't know if that's something worth considering, where for some of these other organizations, this is a significant amount of their operating budget.
I think from what I understood, that they run pretty lean with what they have, and they just use anywhere they can get money from, any volunteers they can bring in to try and just parlay that to more use. So I'm not saying we shouldn't necessarily go down a little bit. I'm just saying from what I see, they're using it very effectively and using everything they can to be able to, because the amount of people they're seeing with the amount of money that they're using for what they're doing is actually really impressive.
So I guess maybe the question is where would we put, if we wanted to, even if we wanted to pull $5,000 from the rehab clinic, where would it be best served? Or if we're going to change the formula, where would it be better served? Anywhere.
The refuge is at half right now, funding. So that could be a place.
That used to be Women's and Children's Justice Center, correct?
Right, Center for Women and Children.
They have a really good track record on using their money too.
I would be comfortable pulling 5 and pulling it down into there.
It makes
But
sense.
that's, we're a team here.
Like that?
I mean, at the end, we'll have a motion, but I would look at those top funded ones and say, if we pulled them all down just a fraction, would it be better spent in some of these others that we're underfunding by half? Food care is, I've tried to wrap my brain around them in the fact that they have received millions, but they're doing something pretty special. We gave them a lot in the CARES Act. The LDS Charities donated, I think, 3 million towards them, but because they have so many different arms in what they do. Housing, food, you name it. And even now I noticed medical needs.
Just to give you, sorry, I just added those numbers there to give you a better idea of what you're looking. That's the how much they're receiving based on their request. I don't know if it does anything. Hopefully it helps you a little bit.
I think that's helpful. Thank you for doing that.
Sorry, Mary, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I'm used to it.
So is the administrative cost down at the bottom, that's completely a separate pot of money then?
Yes. This would come from our admin costs. Yes, it wouldn't be part of the number we're looking at here.
Is that, have we discussed whether we want to actually fund that or not?
I don't think it's been discussed, no. Neither that or the capital project for House of Hope.
It sounded like on the capital projects, we were just kind of, the consensus to me at least seemed to be that we just weren't funding them because they were within the 5-year window, but I don't know if everybody felt that way or not.
My concern with not doing it is, did you say that part of their previous request was the roof? Because isn't that the swamp coolers are affecting that? So I just would not want the past investment to not go too far.
So to clarify that, the replacement of the roof was on their administration building, not on the cottages. So the cottages, you're right, they do have the swamp coolers, but we did not touch the roofs on those.
Okay, then I'm fine. Thank you.
Yep.
How do you all feel about the just to take a little bit of a break from the other to start, let that kind of sit in the back of our minds. What do you think about having a bunch of money just to look at whether or not you're expanding a program that's been growing for a long time? I was actually on some of the committees that were talking about opening the Franklin Community Center in the first place. There's been a lot of growth over the years and different funding sources and different community buy-in over the years to get it to where it's at. I'm not 100% sure whether you can just kind of look at that and redo it somewhere else, but maybe they've learned things that they can. So I was wondering what other people's viewpoints were on that.
Sounds like we're going to lean on your expertise. I don't know anything about it. I mean, I can remember a capital project that we funded them a lot of money. I think to the point of, was it $200,000, but that was a really good project to just say, let's get it done. And I think it follows more in line with what we would hope House of Hope would do.
And I remember that the capital projects came after there was already some momentum that was going on. It started with a coalition between Timpanogos Community Network and Centro Hispano and others and their neighborhood, the people who were living there, who were really trying to get something else in there at a time that the Boulders had, the area that was serving had 60% of all of the police calls in the entire city of Provo were going right there. And so it was a very targeted work to try and give another option for people who live there. And it ended up just kind of growing year to year. And then they were able to parlay it into, hey, we need to have our own space versus space that was being kind of donated by some things that were there, like a little community center that was part of the Boulders before. And they've done a good job with it and kept it growing year to year. And it may be that they've learned things that they can be able to bring to other places. I'm not 100% sure though, on how much it will be transferable versus having grassroots that are going right there, trying to build it up from scratch. Maybe it would give a kickstart, maybe it wouldn't. I'm not sure. Remind me if this is the group, and it was just tonight that we talked about that they were looking to maybe put something out of Saratoga. Was this them? Yeah, they were looking at maybe starting at 3 different other places, and
Right.
the money was just all for somebody to go into studies and feasibility, somewhere north, somewhere in the north, somewhere in the south, and somewhere in Orem.
Okay. And
This information I'm going to give you is with the intent of just providing some historical, institutionalized historical information rather than to bias your opinion. So, Mayor Frost, you were talking about a project that United Way was doing for over $200,000. And just to make a distinction, yes, it was a United Way project, but that was for the community services building, which is where community action is now in Provo. And there's a couple, Centro Espanol used to be there, but they're not there anymore. So that's the project we funded last year for that building. It is through United Way. Now, separately speaking, what they're trying to reproduce here is the cultural center that was built in Franklin South, in this community that Soraya is talking about. That project was funded in part with CDBG several years ago, but only after, as Soraya mentioned, there was momentum with those that would benefit, so the neighborhood, plus some other agencies that saw the benefit of doing something like this. So the planning, which is the money they're asking here for, was not funded with CDBG. It came in, I'm not even sure how, in other ways.
There was a ton of volunteer work that went in that.
Right.
So, yeah, on different agencies and different volunteer groups.
Right. Which again culminated in this cultural center that now has been in service for several years, and with what they're learning now, or what they have learned through that, they want to study how to do it somewhere else. Programmatically, this type of project is eligible. Historically, and I'm speaking for Provo only at this point, historically, we've never funded a planning project for anyone other than the city. So where there may have, and I'm not even sure if that's the case, where there may have been other agencies coming looking for planning funds, Provo City has never provided that funding. One of the reasons why is because of the 20% of administration, even though it may seem it's a big amount, Provo City uses more than 100% of what we could of what we have available for administration. Meaning, for everything that we do with CDBG, we fund it with a full 20%, and then the city pitches in from wherever, their general fund, to cover any additional funding. So it's one of the reasons why Provo never does fund any planning projects other than what the city is fitting in, what the city is looking to do in the future. Again, that's just mainly with the intent of giving you background and information rather than putting a bias on what you want to fund or not.
So Dan, to that point, if we chose not to fund this, these 25,000 that we have allocated for this, that wouldn't go into our services budget. Where would it go? And what would it be used for instead?
I can tell you on the side of Provo City would be funding the administration of the program for us. I would let Jessica address the county and Kenna address Orem.
Yeah, so for Utah County, we have funded some planning projects in the past. So if this committee did decide to fund that, it would have to probably come from Utah County and Orem funds. Provo wouldn't be able to kick in, but we do have enough admin dollars to cover the CDBG program administration. But if you don't fund that, we would apply that towards capital projects that are Utah County specific that aren't listed here.
And I don't know historically what Orem has done, but we would look at it potentially, but we would use it for admin as well.
I guess the question, because this would really be benefiting other parts, like using something that has worked. It sounds like it's a attempt to find something that worked in Provo and see if they could get it to work other places. How valuable is that to the county at large and to Orem to be able to try and have something like this happen there as well.
Yeah, I also feel like trying to do it in 3 places at once is very ambitious. And if they were just doing one, I might feel better about that. But that being said, like I live a few blocks from the South Franklin Community Center, and I do think it's been a really great project there. And if they can reproduce that, I'd love to see it done, and I'd be happy to, help with that.
So if I could speak on behalf of Orem, and I can't fully do that. Obviously, our mayor and city council make those final decisions, but we're limited to, and HUD does it for a good reason. They want the majority of the money to go out to the community. So they limit the cities to only being able to use 20% and 80% of it going out the door to specifically benefit, whether through capital projects, specific neighborhoods or organizations, or, up to 15%, those public services that benefit individuals directly. So given that the 80% is already committed to those and 20% is what the city has to use to administer the program, I'd be surprised if our city council would dip further than the 80% to give additional funding above and beyond that to the organizations, especially where this isn't a kind of direct services to individuals or a project that's specifically going to be built or constructed.
I'm feeling like there's a consensus that's building that we ought to just pull that off and let it go back to its respective agencies to deal with. Am I reading it wrong? And
That's where it sounds like it's going to me too, is that maybe not do it.
yeah.
I guess I would, to speak to it would be like, what would the next step be then? I mean, should we essentially punish them for wanting to plan ahead, wanting to experiment, wanting to, do due diligence, then go and, try something that's not really haven't done the work to look into it. So that would be my speaking to it.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I will just say for my 3 committee members on this call, if Orem and Provo can't or don't have the support to fund a project like this, my 3 committee members, you could take it to our full area review committee at the end of the month and either recommend that Utah County alone funds it or not. So that's an option for my members. If we do have the budget to do that, if that's something you want to recommend to the full committee for Utah County.
I think that's the better place, because we do have a little bit of a bigger, where we're looking at the county in general.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what their vision is. What do you think, Mayor Fulmer? Sorry, Mayor Fulmer.
Oh no, I was just saying I agree with you, Brad, and I think that's a great idea, Mayor and Jessica.
Okay.
Maybe we'll just handle it that way. We'll take that to the Utah County Committee for review.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, great.
Well, I guess that takes care of these 2. So we go back to this other
Did you take care of House of Hope?
Was the consensus then not to fund House of Hope?
I was thinking United Way at this level. I'm not sure. Did we talk about House of Hope and their air conditioners? Or are they both the same?
That was the one that people were worried because they came back in 3 years instead of waiting 5.
Okay. Okay.
So can we make those a 0 if that is the consensus, just so when we make the motion to approve the list as presented, we have that in there?
It's
it
at 0.
Yeah. I'm
It
sorry.
is at 0.
I'm sorry, you're right.
So remind me what happens with that 45,000 that's listed for House of 40,000, excuse me. What happens to that if House of Hope doesn't give? I think we talked about this. Sorry, I didn't remember.
No, that's fine. No, if they don't receive this funding, each entitlement will just have a little bit more for their own capital projects. So this is how we had divided that. We're actually hadn't even seen to fund the project fully based on their LMI service. We would be funding, what is that amount? $32,000 and leaving $12,000 for them to come up with it. So if they don't receive this funding, each one of these just goes back to each entitlement for other capital projects that we have. And see, for Provo, this was a very small part, $6,600, but that's $6,600 that we can use on a project that either didn't get funded or didn't receive as much as we would have liked to give them. So it doesn't go unused. It just goes to other capital projects in the each entitlement.
Yeah, well, the fact that we don't even have the budget here to provide them their minimum asking price seems like a concern. That if we can't give it to them, will they even be able to use that 32,000 that we do have?
Yeah, the minimum request was 40, so it's obviously less than what we would have allocated to them based on the LMI. So.
I think, this is where my head will land on this one as far as House of Hope. And it seemed like they have been dealing with the swamp coolers. They're not ideal, especially during certain, humid times of the year. And they have to keep the doors locked or shut, if I remember right, and windows shut, so you can't have a real good circulation pattern. Central air would be much more accommodating and comfortable, but maybe a couple more years they come back, it's a really easy thing to do, because if you start varying from a plan of 5 years, you've kind of just opened up the box for anybody at that point.
Mayor Frost, this is Steve Downs. One thought, and this probably generally is discussed offline between just 3 entitlements, but there's obviously benefits to having a good functioning HVAC system that circulates air. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to use CDBG CV money for kind of under the guise of air quality and improving the conditions in the living facility during a time of COVID.
It would be a rehab, could fit into a rehab project.
I would probably, Dan and Kenneth, need them to make the connection between COVID and the HVAC. So probably some sort of air purification. Would that add too much cost to the project for us to fund? But it's definitely, I think we could do that if they could tie it to COVID.
I know there's been city buildings around that have been using it for that purpose, and municipal buildings. They were in need of a new HVAC. The air wasn't circulating very well, and it was a appropriate use of CARES Act dollars that were coming directly to, Orem didn't do that specifically, but other cities did.
Okay, yeah, we could.
But we can look at that more and just kind of vet that out.
Right, and all 3 entitlements do have a little bit of CV funding that we still need to allocate, so we can leave it off the plate here, leave it at 0, and then we will put our heads together and see if we can assist them that way.
Okay. Thanks, Steve.
I like that.
So coming back to the public services portion, all the funding available has been allocated already. Is there any desire to move any numbers around or do anything differently? I did add these numbers to the right so that you could have an idea of, what percentage of their request is being funded. And anyway, just looking for some movement on that.
I think other than tinkering, I think we're pretty close. I mean, unless somebody would really like to move something around, I mean, I think it's had great discussion and good perspectives, and I think there's a reason that a lot of these are funded at the level they are, and maybe there's not a desire to take anything off or to, you know, some of these. So maybe we leave it here.
You know what? You always come away with a certain degree of frustration that there's not more money. But I'm satisfied we've kind of struck the right balance with this. I really am.
The one that stands out to me is the Community Action Services Food Bank being funded at 20% of their total ask. That's significantly lower than anything else, and is a, you know, 10,000 is a relatively small grant. I think, you know, giving them something in my mind is, in a way, is obviously better than giving them nothing, but it also is that administrative burden, and is that, are we comfortable with doing that?
I think part of the reason that ended up that way is because they asked for 3 different things, and they themselves said that if they had to choose, circles was their top priority, and we're fully funding circles. And we kind of have put the funding levels for the 3 that they're doing at the levels that they said were their priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess part of my question there then is, do we think they want to take on the administrative burden of a $10,000 grant? I mean, they said they were willing to, so I just want to confirm that we're all comfortable with that.
I'll just throw in from an admin perspective. I'm the one who said we wouldn't usually fund something this low. Community Action is a really experienced grantee. So if this was a smaller or newer agency, I would be hesitant about that. But they've been CDBG grantees for a long time. So I'm not as concerned about their capacity to do it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Well, I'm going to just, no, I don't need to get home anytime soon, but unless there's any further discussion, I will make a motion that we adopt the funding recommendations as outlined in this document right here.
Just to be super picky, can we specify that Centro Hispano's $55,000 can encompass all 3 in that motion?
Good point. And so I'll make the motion to recommend the funding that is outlined in this document, with giving Central Hispanic the ability to use their grant to use as they see needed within the guidelines of their 3 applications.
I can second that.
Sorry, was that Joey?
It's Joey.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we did it. Congratulations. That's awesome. Well, we really, do we need them to do anything else, Jessica or Dan?
I don't think so. I would just ask that committee members not share this with any of these applicants. We still have to divvy up who will get funding from who, and we need to address that United Way question with the Utah County Committee. So if you could just hold off on sharing this information with any of the applicants until the end of the month.
But we are still going live on YouTube, so technically they could.
I mean, you're right.
I was going to mention that.
Right.
So they may already have a clue about it.
That's true. They very well may. Well, I guess if they do come to you with any questions, could you direct them towards staff and we can give them the info?
Good point. So what will happen now is we as staff will determine, based on the amount of money that each of us entitlements can give, we'll determine which of these nonprofits are going to work with which of us or two of us. And we're doing that this week. And then we will be taking these to our commissions and then to our councils. And so probably by May, these will be approved by the councils is our goal. But we appreciate everything that you've done in the last couple of these 2 long nights that we've had. These dollars are very important, as you can see. And like Mayor Frost says, it's too bad we don't have more money. But we are grateful for the money that we do have. I will be sending out the minutes via email for approval. So look for them towards the end of the week or next week. And we'll just need to email approval on those if possible. So, but otherwise, if we don't have anything else, we'll say goodnight and go have some dinner if you haven't already. So.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
So